Yo, party people, May 25th, number 2. Ah! I didn't want to do number 2. Okay, so we're in the book of Revelation, chapter 5. Okay, so we're into 5. Thank God we made it that far so far. Okay, so I was mentioning the last video, I wanted to share with you, all I'm focusing on is the first 3 verses in chapter 5. Let me read it real quick. So, and I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?" And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open it or to look at it. Okay, so I'm focusing on the scrolls for this study today. So, like I mentioned in the last video, the scroll in my commentaries, there was all kinds of information on what different people throughout time have thought what this scroll in the book of Revelation represented, right? So I mentioned in the last video that originally, a long time ago, some of the early interpretations of this was that the scroll here in Revelation represents Old Testament prophecies that are understood only in the fulfillment by Christ. But because this was past, that's kind of not something that people really believe is what this represents here, and it doesn't make sense, but I'm just sharing with you what some of the commentary said, that this used to be what they believed. Then of course another whole group believes that the book is actually the container of the apocalyptic literature that is going to begin, that we see played out when the seals are broken. Duh. Okay, so for sure it's that. I mean, to some degree it's got to be that. I mean, I don't know. We don't know 100%. And then the other people, there's a whole group of other people that say that this is actually represents the book of life that you see opened at the judgment seat of Christ, right? We see books that are opened, right? And one of them is the book of life. And so if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, your name is in the book of life. And so this book could represent many things, but one of the things that my commentary in my study says, it refers you back to Ezekiel and Daniel for some references for scrolls that are very similar to this. So what I was mentioning in the last video, let me show you on my map real quick. So here is Ezekiel and here is Daniel, right? And see how it says exile? So those that haven't seen my previous videos when I did the Old Testament, this is the timeline of the nation of Israel. This is where the northern kingdom broke away. They weren't supposed to do this. And this is the southern kingdom. So these guys are usurpers, right? So these guys were always a mess. These guys sometimes were a mess. All right, so here, this yellow timeline is where the northern kingdom falls to the kingdom of Assyria. And they fall because of their apostasy, right? Southern kingdom lasts a bit longer, but they also fall because they screw up and they walk away from God. And so here, Ezekiel and Daniel are products. I like to say that they're products of their environment. So Ezekiel and Daniel are prophetic books that were written after the fall of Jerusalem, and they were both in exile in Babylon, right? They both went there in similar circumstances, but different, right? And so both of them have aspects in their books that are kind of not apocalyptic, but definitely they have some stuff that bears some resemblance to the book of Revelation. So in my study Bible, it refers me back to the book of Daniel and the chapter 12. So if you've never read Daniel, Daniel is freaking awesome, but get a study Bible or get something you can study with as you're reading it, because there's a lot of detail about future events after Daniel that have been fulfilled that don't make sense unless you have a study Bible, and then it makes total sense. Okay, because there's a lot of pictures. Okay, so here we are in Daniel chapter 12, and so we just read, it said, I saw a throne, I saw on the right hand of him who sat on the throne. So him, of course, is God, right? Remember, we went from the early part of the book of Revelation was Jesus speaking and John focusing and having his attention focused on Jesus. And now his attention is focused on God the Father. He has a vision of the heavenly realm and everything in heaven in the throne room, right? And so this is taking place in the throne room of God. And this is a continuation of chapter 4, which is awesome. Read chapter 4. Okay. So we know that God the Father is sitting on the throne, and in his hand, his right hand, there's a scroll. We've talked about the right hand, right? I did a whole study on the right hand. So do a study on the right hand if you want to see some really cool stuff. And the scroll is sealed with 7 seals. So it says to go back to Daniel chapter 12. So let me read to you a little bit of what's going on. So I just shared with you where Daniel is in the timeline and kind of where he's at prophetically to the nation, right? So the first, like chapters 9 through 11 of Daniel, are prophetic visions for the future, right? These are things that are going to happen after Daniel, leading up to the Antichrist. The very last section of Daniel 11, chapter verse 36 on, is actually the Antichrist. So then what you see, and that ends, and then chapter 12 starts. So let me read to you what chapter 12 says. So at that time, Michael shall stand up. So Michael is an archangel. He's a badass. He's one of the warrior angels. And it says, at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. So there is a mention of the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Okay, so seal up the book. So what they were saying there is he didn't have an actual physical book, right? That all of these prophecies he'd been given from 9 through 11, and culminating with the Antichrist, then it ends with, because the Antichrist time is so bad, the time of Revelation, that's why it says in chapter 12, at that time, Michael shall stand up. Okay, so Michael's going to get on the scene and at the end times. And so it's talking about a book, right? So the book that they're talking about with Daniel, how they phrased it was that it's a spiritual book that is sealed until the end time. So, and that is what they're referring to back in the book of Revelation, that what he saw spiritually and what he was sealing spiritually was actually physically up in heaven in God's hand. Okay, so that's what they're referring to there. And then they also referred to Ezekiel chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. So let me read that to you. And remember, we talked about Ezekiel earlier in Revelation, the chapter 1, because he had a vision of, there's some major overlays with Ezekiel as well. He had a vision of the creatures that are before the throne of God, right? The cherubim, and that was in chapter 1 and chapter 10. So here is something about the scroll, and it was chapter 2, verse 9 and 10, and it says, now when I looked, there was a hand stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll of a book was in it. Then he spread it before me, and there was writing on the inside and on the outside, and written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe. Okay, so that fits as well, because we're talking about in the scroll here that we're seeing in the heavenly realm that John is seeing has seals on it, right? And we know we're about to go into the seals, the breaking of the seals, right? So we don't know exactly what is in the book. The commentaries don't know what's exactly in the book because it doesn't tell us what's exactly in the book, right? We see what happens when the seals are broken. So that is what we do know. So I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about it, honestly, because if it was imperative that we know exactly what was in that book, then God would have told us, right? So I think the book, it makes sense that it's the apocalyptic events that are about to happen, but it also makes sense that it could contain the book of life. Who knows? Maybe it's a new song that they're going to worship up there. Who knows? But there's something apocalyptic involved in it for sure, because that's what this is about to expose, and that's what John's about to share. All right, so that's all I had for you. Sorry it took so long this morning. Read your Bible. Jesus is coming, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.